Today I am starting the first of several color studies that I'll do, and there's a couple reasons for this, and even in this first one I've learned quite a bit, really. I'm going to be testing the Phyrrol Scarlet, let's just call it Scarlet, and the goal of this is to learn how the paint works and how it's going to mix with the other colors that I have in the palette. I have a feeling I'm going to learn that maybe a couple of the colors are redundant and maybe I need to add another color, but I guess we'll see how this goes as I progress over time. I've got a board that I can mark out. It's just some watercolor paper, and I can fit 10 squares that are 2.5 by 3. So I'm going to go ahead and mark those out. And then across the top row, I'm going to do rose, the new Gamboge, Viridian Green, Phthalo Blue, and Carbazole Violet. Let's just call them Violet. On the bottom row from left to right is Burnt Orange, the Hansa Yellow Light, Undersea Green, Ultramarine Blue, and Moon Glow. For anyone wanting to get into painting, this exercise is helpful for several reasons, and I'm telling you this as somebody who's doing it with watercolor for the first time. I've actually done it, I guess I've only done it one time with oil paintings, twice. No, I've done it twice. 2 times with oil paints, and it's very helpful for at least 2 reasons. The first reason is that your paints will have a different consistency. Some of the paints are going to be thick and some of the paints are going to be very thin and malleable, even in their state straight out of the tube. Some of them are going to be a little more translucent and some of them are going to be thicker, if you will. It seems that this color, the Scarlet, is relatively thick and relatively overpowering relative to other colors. As I'm going along, I'm starting to see that just a little bit changes the color a lot, whereas adding a little bit of other colors into it doesn't change it quite so much. So the Scarlet is a pretty powerful color. It looks like I have 2 greens that are both cool, I guess you could say. The Viridian and the Undersea Green both seem to be kind of cool. So that may be a little bit of a problem. In future mixings, I'll have to look at how the Yellow Light and the Gamboge mix with the different blues to get some greens, because I may need some warmer greens in there. The Viridian was quite a thin color, and in fact the orange and yellow, both the Gamboge and the Yellow Light, are both very thin and were easily overpowered or mixed pretty strongly with the Scarlet. Phthalo Blue was pretty strong. That one felt like maybe a match for the Scarlet in terms of sort of thickness and the way at which it mixed. And I was kind of surprised that Ultramarine Blue felt a little thinner than it actually was. A little disappointed to discover that the Violet and Moon Glow were so similar. I'm going to have to keep trying those out, but maybe I'll take one of those off of the palette if they're so similar and there's not a lot of difference between them. Kind of doesn't make sense to have both of them out there. I guess we'll have to see. And may have to take the rose off of the palette because the rose and the Scarlet are actually pretty similar as well, although the Scarlet is warmer and the rose is cooler. So maybe that kind of makes sense between the 2 of those. Anyway, I'm going to do a few more of these studies. You can see how the colors start to mix together, and then I'll have these as a reference. So that way, as I start painting and I'm kind of looking for colors that maybe I want to add or looking at particular values, I can at least have a theoretical idea of how things will come together in my head. Obviously, a lot of experience is required for that sort of thing to become intuitive, but having these as a reference as I'm just getting started will... obviously this takes time up front, but it'll give me a reference as I'm going and looking for the types of colors or, the types of values that I'm looking for. It will give me an idea as to what to look for and how, maybe at least roughly how to mix it. It's not quite as easy doing this in watercolor in some ways as it is in oil paint. In oil paint, it's pretty easy to do in a way because you can kind of see the mixture pretty easily before you put it on the canvas. Whereas this was a little more difficult because, especially for the purples, the darker ones, it's not exactly clear if it's mixing properly. You can kind of see me put like a little mark down just to kind of judge how it's going, and then maybe try to remix a little bit because it's pretty tough in some of those to actually see how much is mixing. You don't really, when you're mixing it without any water or very little water to get the strongest version of the color, it's not very easy to see. So that part is a little difficult. Maybe takes some getting used to. I don't know. Anyway, first one down. On to many more, and in future episodes, it's not going to be me talking about the color board. We'll start talking about art and AI and motivation and all those types of things. Catch you in the next one.